Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening. Welcome to another beautiful edition of Live with Lloyd. I am your host, astronumerologist Lloyd Strayhorn. As you see, we have my very distinguished guest on, Astro Empowerment Specialist, Miss Khalea Washington. We go back over 30 years of working together as colleagues. We're both Aquarians. So we have a very long and valued, respected history with each other. And we're going to be talking about retrograde because today Mercury is retrograde for the last time for 2023, spilling into early January of 2024. So there are also other planets. I understand Pluto has now moved into Aquarius and will last until 2044. So there's a lot of things going on. And so she is one of the best at what she does. I do want to let you know that today's show is sponsored to you by Manifest on Purpose with Miss Kimberly. This is an excellent podcast. You can get it on Google, you can get it on Spotify, you can get it on Apple, you can get it on Spreaker, or whatever the case is. I would invite all of you to listen to her show. In fact, I was so impressed with listening to her show, I started sponsoring on her end. And so if you want to get a focus on yourself, understanding the subconscious mind, how to get some things direct, this is the place to go. So just go to your local podcast store or preference and just click on Manifest on Purpose with Miss Kimberly. Also, my brother, King Simon, is also one of the sponsors for today, too. He is a brother I've been knowing at least over 20-something years. He's written books on the subject of numerology, and every single year he grows. I mean, this is a man you can see growth every time. So I am so proud and honored to know this brother. In fact, he's the one that really pulled my coat. He really revived my career and everything like that. So giving credit where credit is due to this distinguished brother here, King Simon. Before I bring on my very special guest, I want to let you know that today, I think I got it right today. Today is Wednesday, the 13th. The sun is in Sagittarius at 10:31 this morning. It moved from Sagittarius into the sign of Capricorn. Mercury is now retrograde officially for the next 21 days. Normally, Mercury retrograde is always a period of 3 times a year for 21 days at length. And I understand that's what it takes to start a habit or break a habit, about 21 days, which is interesting. It's a 1 universal month, a 3 universal week, a 5 universal day. So if you happen to be a Gemini, Virgo, or an Aquarius, like my upcoming guest, or born under the sign of Leo, or if you're born on the 4th, the 5th, the 13th, the 14th, the 22nd, 23rd, and 31st of the month, well, this is your day. So without further ado, what I'm going to do, hold on one second. Let me get this straight. Hi, everybody. Listen, the year's almost over. I'm telling you, it's almost a wrap, okay? But there's a lot of things, and one of the things I want to do is bring on my very special guest. I think other than Brother Rebels Bay, she's probably been on more times than anybody else. So if you say I'm partial to her, you better believe we got a history that goes back decades, and she is the best of the best. And I'm talking about no less than Khalea Washington. Hey, Khalea. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Looking beautiful as always, young lady. Okay.
Thank you.
Listen, you were the one that started pulling my coat about void of course. So let's go to void of course and then go to Mercury retrograde and you go from there because this is your show.
Okay, but we'll share it, okay? Because I don't
Of
want to be
course,
a
of course.
talking.
You know
I
that.
don't want to be a talking head. Um, Avoid, of course, the moon changes signs every 2 to 2.5 days. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
in one sign, and then it moves to the next sign. But it doesn't just move to the next sign. It's like traveling, having, some things are a short distance, some take a little longer. When the moon leaves one sign, before it enters another sign, and you start picking up the energy of what that sign represents, it's called a void of course moon. That means that it's kind of like out of sync. And a void of course moon kind of acts the same way as the retrograde, you know.
Yes,
So
right. Exactly.
it you call it a period of abeyance, you know, and you don't stop doing things while the moon is void of course. But it's that cycle where you're more likely to run into glitches, delays, you have an appointment, you break your neck to get there, and you find out the doctor had to leave because of an emergency. So when the moon is void, of course, you take it with a grain of salt, but I always check my calendar to see if it's void, of course, before I make any major commitments. You know, I'm an artist and a designer as well. So I
Khalea
never,
collections.
yeah. So what happens is I design the things, I make them, but if I need things done on an industrial machine, I have to go to a tailor. I never do it
Hmm.
on a void of course mode. I mean, we have
Hmm.
stood there and he has said, "Oh no, you meant for me to do it this way." And I'm like, "It's my stuff. I know what I would." You know what I mean? So that's kind of
Yeah,
how
I hear
the
you.
void of course operates. Now, the interesting thing is, to my knowledge, back in the day when people went to an astrologer and got a reading, they came away thinking that uh, oh, this person is so powerful, they knew so much. But that's because not only were they looking at their birth date and where their planets lined up, but they were also looking at the cycles they were going into. If the moon was void, of course, if they were going to make a major decision or commitment or purchase while Mercury was retrograde. And
Hmm.
Mercury in astrology is the planet that governs communications of all kinds. And what happens is all of these planets are in the sky and they're doing their thing. And the best way to describe a retrograde is it's as if some precipitation was around that, so you can't get the full benefits of what it represents. So for an astrologer, we always say don't buy, swap, sell, trade, or make major commitments while Mercury is retrograde because it might be some little glitch or a snafu. So, this is a cycle where people are more likely to have problems with communications, uh, pressing for a commitment that for some reason circumstances don't allow you or the parties involved to honor the commitment, or uh, if you sign a contract and you're excited about it, but there's some things with the fine print that you didn't recognize that come up later. I'm a victim of today's retrograde because I've been going to the dentist, and today was supposed to be the final day that everything was done. And when I got there, all the work was not completed. So today, of all days, when I'm on the show with you, which is a form of communication, not
Yep.
only is my dentistry not done, but now I'm speaking with a lisp until the work is finished. And when she said, "Oh, we'll be finished on the 13th," I said, "Not the 13th. Mercury's going to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
retrograde." And sure enough, I'm trying to navigate around the minor income is par for the course. But
Now,
what I would
go ahead.
tell people in advising them of how to deal with the retrograde, it's not a bad cycle. It's not a cycle where you necessarily go, "Oh my God, Mercury is retrograde," because you know all every time Mercury goes retrograde, I get all these posts. Khalea, is Mercury retrograde? Because you
I get
can
it too.
feel it
Yeah.
even if you don't know what it means. It's just like things just don't flow. There might be
Hmm.
blockages or snafus, but this is the cycle to do your behind the scenes work. The people who will be
Uh-huh.
most adversely impacted are people who are last minute people. Because if you tend to do
That's
things last minute,
interesting.
of
Go
course,
ahead.
because if you tend to do things last minute, Mercury is that cycle where you need to plan ahead, where you need to be over prepared, where you need not to overcommit, because you want to blame it on Mercury, but this is the slowing down cycle. This is the causing confusion and delays. And here you come late. It's definitely going to not work in your favor. So this is the cycle where you have to be on your A game. And if you have a tendency to be a last minute person, this is the cycle for these next 3 weeks. If it's important to you, then act like it. Plan ahead. Lay yourself out. Double check. Make sure you have everything. And if you run into any delays, don't take it personal if you know you've done the best you can. Now, the interesting thing for me is that there have also been times when Mercury was retrograde, and there are things that I thought I had lost, never to find again, and they popped up. I'll never forget, a friend of mine went to Egypt and she asked me to house sit for her. And I was there for a week. And when I got home, I couldn't find one of my favorite watches. And I kept saying, "Have you seen my watch? I know I had it there. I know I had it there." And she said, "No, my place is not that big. It's not that many places it could be. I'm sorry, it's not here." A year later, she asked her 5-year-old son, "Kwabena, why are you playing with your trucks and cars? Why do you have Sister Khalea's watch on top of your train?" He said, "No, that's not her watch." He said, "This is what I've been using to connect my trains." Once Mercury went
Interesting.
direct, it turned up. There have been times when I had misplaced money and thought I had lost it. Put my hand in a coat pocket I hadn't worn in a year. So good things can happen because it's a mercurial thing. It's
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
trickster. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
anything substantial or important, you do your behind the scenes work. This is that cycle where you rest. We're going into the winter solstice. You soak instead of shower so that you can calm down, so that you can release the stress, so that you can get your priorities together where you're not over anxious and overcommit.
Hmm. So, in other words, but the one advantage is if you have an item that you've lost or misplaced, and for the life of you can't do it now, is probably now that Mercury's retrograde for the next 21, 22 days. Well, next 21 or 20 days moving forward, that you can find it more than likely. That's
You know,
what you're saying.
and see, you got to understand, because astrology is not always used by people in positions of power. You know, um, I always pay attention to large political moves. Like, for instance, when Barack Obama was sworn in for the first time, either Mercury was retrograde or the moon was void, of course. And the ironic thing is, he had to be sworn in by 12 noon, and everything was getting ready to go direct at 12:20. But sure enough, he was sworn in before it went direct. And so I was frightened because anything can happen. Usually, if a person it makes a major commitment like that, something happens to him. But because
Sure.
it's the
Sure.
first African American president, everybody around the world was praying for him. But what did happen is so many of the major changes that he wanted to implement were either thwarted, blocked, and
Yep.
voted down. So people said,
Yeah.
"See, you got a black president, but he didn't do anything." But they were on him like a life support. He was being blocked every step of the way.
In
And I
fact,
always look back at the fact that it was a cycle that wasn't really favorable,
but
and that,
that makes sense because on the day he was sworn in on that August the 20th of
you mean
2000,
January 20th,
January 20th. Thank you, dear.
right?
Let's
Hmm.
see, that's Mercury retrograde right there. That very night, the Republicans had met at some restaurant or something to plot how to make sure he did not finish a first term.
Oh yeah.
Never in their wildest dream did they anticipate he would also win the second term in 2012 also. So
I'm
it was so there was resistance from day one with healthcare, this, that, and the other, all kinds of resistance, and wanting to put some people on the Supreme Court. Well, let's delay it until the vote comes, and then after they're coming. So it was all kinds of drama.
The
You're
same thing.
really, really right. All kinds.
The same thing happened with Biden. I don't think Mercury was retrograde, but I think it was a void of course moon when he was sworn in. So a lot of people were so relieved to get rid of the former president that it made me know that even though he was president, it was going to be a really tough 4 years. And look at all the things that he has inherited, as well as the things that have happened since he's been there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so timing is very important, but we're still very, very fortunate for people like us who started 30, 40 years ago on this journey. I'm looking at how numerology and astrology is mainstreaming. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Yep.
I'm reading a novel now, and in the novel, the author of the story is talking about a situation, and she says she told me not to do it now because Mercury is retrograde, and I had to chuckle to myself. You know, there's so much information now that is available for the layperson to at least get a sense of what's going on in terms of factoring in what's going on with the planets as well as life. In fact, I was watching a game show, and the question was a yes or no question about a restaurant in LA that is willing to adapt their menu with certain changes if they've run out of food, but they'll only do it while Mercury is retrograde. And I thought that was so funny,
Now
and
that's
it turned out to be
interesting.
true. But
Now
go
let
ahead.
me ask you this: how did you get started in astrology?
I was born on a cusp, you know, the last day of one sign and the beginning of another. And in my town, we had two local newspapers. One was the Star Ledger, and the other one was the Newark Evening News. And so one said that I was a Capricorn, and the other one said that I was Aquarius. And I thought it had to be bogus because they couldn't even get my sign right. But I was going through a really, really challenging period in my life, and
Mm-hmm.
I saw an ad where you can have your chart printed up for a few dollars, and I sent it away. And that's when I learned that you don't just go by the person's sign, because there's so many other planets in a person's chart. One governs the moon tells me how you feel about things, how you respond to what you feel, and how you show your feelings to others. And the moon can be in any of the 12 signs. And then Mercury is your planet of communications, and depending on what sign that is, that tells me how you sound and speak and how you respond to what you hear. And then there's Venus, and whatever sign Venus is tells me about your taste, your aesthetic sense, how you adorn yourself, and the kind of people you're attracted to and compatible to. Mars, in a
Interesting.
person's chart, tells you about your energy, your stamina, your fighting spirit, your sex drives. If it's Mars is well aspected, most major athletes have Mars in Capricorn because that's the best place for it to be. It's exalted there. So we have like Muhammad Ali and Michael Jordan both have Mars in Capricorn. And then Jupiter in a person's chart tells you what their job and career aspirations are, where they'll be fortunate, good luck, if they're prone to excess, if they're prone to overindulgence, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you go through putting these signs together and looking at which ones are compatible with one another, that's where the person's life is going to be easier and flowing. And then there are always going to be signs that are not compatible to other signs. That's the area kind of where you get in your own way, or you block yourself, or your personality fixates, and you, even though you should know better, you keep doing the same thing over and over because you haven't learned that karmic lesson. So once I did my chart, it matched me to a T. And I was like, this is unbelievable. But
Now,
the
what
thing
about the
about it,
rising sign? You didn't touch on the rising sign. What does that represent?
the rising sign is determined by the person's time of birth. And some people, their time of birth wasn't recorded. And as you know, when we met, we had an instant connection. You were
Yep.
so positive and encouraging and such a facilitator, and made me come out of the closet as an astrologer because I was just doing my friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
said, look, I think you're great. I want you to come on my show. And as fate would have it, we both turned out to be Aquarians. We
that's
both
right.
had compatible numbers because I'm a
Yeah,
2 and you're a 7. And we both had Virgo rising signs, which
yep,
made us very analytical and detail oriented. So it was like you are a gift to me, I'm a gift to you. But
yep.
going back to how I got started, the crazy thing about having my first chart done is that it said I would be a great astrologer, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" I all I did was buy this chart. Now I'm going to be a great astrologer, and I'll never
Yeah,
forget
yeah, I
when
know.
you invited me on your show. It had been about maybe 15 years, 18 years that I had been studying, but Virgos are very exacting and very detail oriented. So
Yep.
even though I knew a lot, I tried to turn you down because I didn't think I knew enough. And I was worried about what if someone asks me something I don't know? I don't want people to think I'm a fraud. I want it to be respected. You
Yeah, but
know,
clearly we can't know everything.
I
Who
know, but
who knows everything? No one.
I know, but I'm just saying, I thank you for urging me to step out on faith as my other astrologer friends because it really made me dig within the reservoirs of myself. It made me realize that I didn't have to know everything
Nope.
and that I didn't have to be perfect, but that if I were as honest and as accurate as possible. And I'm a natural born empath and I love my people. And if I could find a way to share the information that was going to help people, um, whether it's self help, behavior modification, I'm telling you, it's been the ultimate honor. I could not have imagined it because as a result of being on your show, working with you, learning from you, and getting an audience from you, it made me do everything I could to keep getting better, to keep learning, to be able to share information nothing is more gratifying from me than to do a reading on a person and have them say, well, I kind of had a feeling that that's the cycle I was in and the things that you're encouraging me to do or the times you're saying might be better.
Hmm.
Um, and you've put it in perspective. And I really appreciate it because if you get a good or an accurate reading, unless you just tend towards being delusional, which some people are, it really should match what your gut is telling you. And I'm just using the cycle and the signs and the planets to explain why this is happening right now, what's next, how best to approach it, if you should wait, or if it's going to work at all.
Well, I know you gave me, you're one of the few astrologers that if I had any questions astrologically, I'd always come to you. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
there was one associate I was going to deal with. And when I gave you the information, you said disaster. And that proved to be a disaster in every sense of the word. So, I mean, so it's just amazing, I guess. And then the way we collaborated for years of doing this and traveling stuff. So it was really, really nice, Khalea. And I'm just very honored. So now there are other things that now what about I will say this Pluto is going into Aquarius, which is our sign. What
Mm-hmm.
does Pluto represent and what does it represent in the sign of Aquarius?
I've been thinking about that because Pluto is like big changes. It's
Yeah,
big changes on a global scale.
yeah.
And we've already started to see that. That's one thing about these sign changes, especially the planets that are going to be there for a long time. When you compare our lives and our lifestyle compared to 20, 30 years ago, you know, Aquarius represents new, different, odd, unusual, and artists. The art movement throughout the pandemic has been exploding because by people not being able to do their normal routine, go out, socialize, they are really exploring their creative side. Okay.
Hmm.
There's been a lot of gender blending, you know, um, I don't have anything against people being whatever they want. But if you notice now, people are coming out if they want to wear a dress, if they want to wear pink hair, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? If they want to
yeah,
have 75 earrings, if they want to
yeah.
have tattoos up, that's all Aquarian. So we're learning how to adapt not only to changes, but how the changes are taking place. The other thing about Aquarian is technology, you know, and back in 2020, well, 1999, and they had that forecast that the world was coming to an end
Yeah, but
in
yeah, yeah,
2000 and everybody
yeah.
was panicked.
UK. Yeah.
That's really happening now. Not so much the ending, but the big changes. Because these last 4 years leading up to Pluto going into Aquarius, people are being forced to learn and to change and adapt like never before. We've got
Hmm.
85-year-olds that are on their smartphones, that are zooming, that are downloading apps. You no longer can pick up the phone and just talk to someone. So the change that is going to be natural for the generation behind us, we're learning more than we ever thought we would. Just you doing this broadcast, after doing radio for all of these years,
Yep.
who would have thought that you would be able, and see how you've been assisted. And the reason why I say see how you've been assisted, that's when you know you're in the right direction. When you say, well, let me see what happens if I do this. And then because it's not your age, it's like, oh, wow, this is daunting. I don't know how to do this and I don't know how to do that. But there's so many people who love and appreciate what you do. They're volunteering, they're assisting, they're helping you. And look at what you've learned in the last 3 years.
That's true.
That's going
Very
to
true.
continue. So, what I would say to anyone that's dealing with Pluto and Aquarius, yes, there's going to be loss, a continued loss. And unfortunately, it's going to be at a rapid fire pace because spirits are exiting out. It might seem like they're young. It might seem like they did not deserve it. But some of us are not meant to live forever. Some babies are born and they only live a couple of months. So that's been kind of daunting for us to
Hmm.
have to
Hmm.
accept. But I
Hmm.
saw in 2018, even before the panic came, I remember there were a lot of deaths and transitions. Some people were noteworthy, some people were everyday people. And it just hit me when I looked at the cycle we were in. And I remember saying out loud, oh my God, it's leaving season. And I caught myself and I said, Khalea, don't say that. But it just came out of me, a certain knowing. And
But
look
you're
at
an
what
empath anyway.
yeah, and look at what's happened since then. So we have to deal with this. I don't even want to call it a new normal, but there are cycles, there are periods. Sometimes it's a pandemic, sometimes it's a tsunami, sometimes it's a combination of all the above. And we're quaking in our boots because it's like, wow, I can't believe this is all happening at the same time. But you
Hmm.
got to realize it's cyclic. I mean, this is the same planet that was once covered in ice. This is the same planet where dinosaurs walked. But because of the shift and the planets and the melting, we got a new world. We're shifting into another world within this world. And so instead of getting stuck on the what's happening, it's really more of a focus for us to adapt. The fact that we're no longer involved in the climate change summit leaves us at peril because the earth is changing. Normally we would go outside this time of year and it would be cold or it would be snowing. Now we can get 2 or maybe 3 days a week where the temperature is in their 50s and then it goes down to
Yeah.
30. You know, the world is changing. We have to be willing to really look at what time it is, respect that cycle, adapt to it, and whether it's astrology, common sense, or science, take advantage of the opportunity to learn so that we can be a part of the change instead of a victim of it.
But you know what's interesting when you were talking about earlier about Pluto going into Aquarius, don't forget that was with the recent advent of the last 2.5 years or so of AI.
Mm-hmm.
Now AI is on everything. You
Mm-hmm.
can do almost everything. You can download the apps on your phone. You can download it on your computer. Apps are like threatening people's employment situation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's that's the
Absolutely.
Hollywood was on strike for like months because of the threatening of AI. Why would Hollywood people need writers when
Mm-hmm.
AI could you just feed the information to an AI and they'll put out a script faster, cheaper, with more plots and everything like that. So it's really, really a transitional time for a lot of people too.
And what is AI but a form of communication, which is what Aquarius represents? I heard an actress say a couple of weeks ago that she was an extra in a film, and that after the film was over, one of the producers came to her and said, "We'd like to use you in something else." And she thought, "Oh, that's great. Will I be a regular?" They said, "No, because it's going to be a behind the scenes, like where you're an audience member in the background. And once you do it once, we'll just use AI to have you pop up over and over in different things." She said, "Absolutely no way. Why would I
Yeah,
want that?
yeah,
I wouldn't."
yeah.
So unfortunately, these cycles always have pluses and minuses.
Hmm.
At
Hmm.
first we're excited because it's new and it's cutting edge, but too many things are designed to cut out the common man or woman, especially when it comes to finances or revenues. I remember when we first started getting automated messages on our phone as opposed to being able to talk to someone live. And allegedly, I don't know what way that was supposed to benefit us, because everywhere you go now, you'll see somebody walking down the street yelling into their phone, "Customer service, customer service." They want to speak to a live person, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
But at the same
definitely.
time, think of how many jobs that has taken. You know, everybody's had to shift. Everyone's had to comport themselves. And there's no one at the head of it on our side. And when I say our side, I mean as opposed to big business, to ensure that it's fair, that it's a level playing field. So you got to factor that in.
Now, let me ask you this. Are there, because we are coming up into 2024, which is right around the corner, literally, and because of the transformation of Pluto into Aquarius, are there particular signs that are likely to be more of a standout, or are there particular signs that are likely to be more challenged? Not that because people have to understand, because you are of a sign, there are other planetary makeup in your chart that will affect it. But would there
Well,
be any?
my response to that would be too general, and I'll tell you why. Transiting Jupiter, and Jupiter is your job and your money and your career, is in
Hmm.
Taurus. Okay. Then Uranus is going into Aquarius. Anything in Aquarius is not compatible to anything in Taurus, you
Yep,
know.
yep,
So
yep.
Scorpios could be adversely aspected. They could go through some changes. Now, does that mean that everything is going to be bad for Scorpios? No, because when these cycles occur, it's really more about lessons. Where do I need to change? Where do I need to be more flexible? Where do I need to adapt? How can I not get stuck in the righteousness of my views? It feels like you're being punished at the time, but as you go through the cycle, in order to thrive and survive, we all have to make adjustments, you know? So this is a cycle where there's going to be a lot going on in terms of planets moving into different signs and sometimes not being compatible to other signs. But the main thing is to take inventory. You can't say, well, I've been doing it for 50 years. That's out. It
Yeah,
just
yeah.
doesn't work anymore. You know, I look at the person's chart when I do it. And depending on what their circumstances is, if it's a job change, if it's relocating, if it's a relationship. And the first thing I determine is based on their planetary lineup, looking at what signs are compatible with one another, looking at what signs are adverse to one another, okay? Whether they are adaptable, whether they are fixed and they only function well if they can keep doing it a certain way. And the
Hmm.
first thing I determine is based on who they are and how they are wired, what is the best way to give them the information that they need that they can embrace? Because if I simply say no and your heart is saying yes, you'll be like, yeah, I got the reading, but she didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. But if
No,
I
I know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if I look at how your planets are lined up, then it allows me to know that based on who you are, these are the best approaches that will allow you to be more flexible. Like a friend of mine had a daughter and she had a weight problem, you know, and she was a Taurus and her moon was in Leo. So both of them were in fixed signs. The moon in Leo is very indulgent, you know,
Hmm.
so they're constantly getting on her and berating her about her size and her weight wasn't going to work. But what would work was putting her in a situation where she could maybe take classes while she was young about learning how to cook healthier food, being able to talk about how much better she felt versus doing it this way and that way would allow her to adapt. But that constantly riding her and saying, I just keep
It's not going
telling
to
her,
help her at all.
but
That's not
but
going to help
but
her at all.
but see, everybody is wired differently, you know, and the parent might be a mutable sign where if things are not going a certain way, they have the ability to adapt and change. But if the
Yeah, but
child
if
is
she's a fixed sign, that's going to be a whole different
right,
energy.
right. And when I spoke to them about it, they said, I never thought about it that way. I said, yeah, she needs options. That's what she needs. While you're
Hmm.
berating her about her weight and her diet, what are you doing? What options are you creating for her while she's young so that she can learn how to adapt and change within herself?
Let me
And
say this. Let me back up a second. You were talking about how the planetaries was aspecting Taurus and then Uranus is coming into play in Aquarius, and then
Right.
you mentioned Scorpio, and all of a sudden it dawned on me about P Diddy. There's been in the news him losing the lawsuit. He's lost a lot of his sponsors. They've just dropped him.
Yep.
Other lawsuits are coming forward, but I know that the opposition sign to Scorpio is Taurus, which is being
Right.
planetarily
Absolutely.
aspected.
And anything in Aquarius squares Taurus, and a square is more adverse than an opposition. So there are people who have waited I haven't been following it, but I am aware of what's going on with him.
Yeah, me too.
there
Yeah.
there are people who have waited a very long time to see this happen. I mean, the rumors about him and some of the things that he's done that has hurt and adversely affected people's lives have been afoot for a very long time. Now, that's the thing about karma, you know, because very often we can see people, especially noteworthy and alleged successful people, get away with things for a very long time. And we'll be like, wow, they get away with everything. But when those stars line up, and they line up in a way that is totally adverse to you, it has a snowball effect.
And that seems what's
Actually,
happening too.
will wish that it had happened before because it wouldn't have been that bad. But you got to realize Scorpio is a fixed sign.
Yep.
So that, and so is Aquarius, so is Taurus, so is Leo. So sometimes if the fixed signs get away with things for long periods of time, they get stuck. They don't feel as compelled to change. They get addicted to their bad behavior. It's just like driving, and I got to throw this in, even though it doesn't tie directly to the signs. Is since I've been back in New Jersey, I've noticed that, oh my God, I mean, most ratchet, reckless, vicious, I mean, they just, people talk about New York drivers, but Jersey drivers is a whole nother other. They
Hmm.
drive like they have squatters' rights and everybody else is in the way. So I was saying
Hmm.
to a family member, I saw them do something. Somebody was getting ready to go through the toll and they would decide whether they should go to the left or the right. And you could see them slowing down. You could see them indecisive. And instead of letting them do whatever they needed to do, they actually accelerated so that when the person in front of us actually realized they needed to go to the right or the left, they actually started talking to themselves out loud and said, I I can't believe. And I said, no, 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 no. This is the conversation we need to be having. The conversation, and I want you to put this in the context of people being fixed and not being willing to change and adapt. I
Hmm.
said, I don't really care about them. But you saw them. They were, I said, no, what I saw is I saw that you could see that they were not sure and that you chose to accelerate with a family member in the car. Help me with
Hmm.
that part. And they said, but you don't understand. I've been driving longer than you and blah, blah, blah. And I said, but I appreciate the fact that you've been driving longer than me. However, and this goes back to P. Diddy and situations like that. Just because you've been driving longer than me, it puts you in a situation where there's some bad habits that you've picked up along the way that you've
Hmm.
gotten comfortable with that you need to unlearn. Maybe you need to go and take the defensive driving test so that you can realize, yes, I do have my driver's license. Yes, I have been driving for a long time, but some of the patterns and behaviors that I've gotten comfortable with are putting myself and other people at risk, and I need to unlearn that. Well, the average person, if they haven't got a major accident and they don't have a lot of points, they don't volunteer for it. Even though I think you get like 3 points off your license if you do have an accident in the future and your
Mm-hmm.
insurance rates go down. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing with people and personalities. We all have a certain personality, we all have a certain temperament. And when things go wrong or we're dealing with adversity, we go into, oh, it's so terrible and you don't know what I've been through. But you need to take inventory. What can I do to change? If I got a reading and the person's information was good, but they didn't say what I wanted to hear, what part of that can I take? What part of that can I implement?
Yeah,
What
but
do
most people don't
I
think like
modify?
that. Most people
Yeah,
don't do that realistic self inventory. But let me just say one more thing about P. Diddy. His sign is Scorpio, but his number, he's born on the 4th,
I
which
know.
is ruled by the sign of Aquarius.
Hmm.
So when you put all those combinations together, and I mean, people seem to be coming out the woodworks now, telling everything, all the business. It's like people have been knowing about this for a long time. So it
Well,
just goes to show you.
one of the things that I've noticed about entertainers and celebrities is very often we judge them by who they're supposed to be and what they've accomplished. But everybody has a shadow self. And that means
Hmm.
to the planet, you have certain gifts and talents and areas where you're well aspected. But then there's also this karmic side of little things that you could need to change or adapt. And sometimes, because the PR on you or the spin is so good, you feel absolved of that. And why should I change? So, the number one thing for me is whenever someone who's supposed to be noteworthy, whether it's a president or a rapper or whatever, whenever that other side comes out, I'm not surprised because that's the area where they've had their whole life to make modifications and adapt, and they didn't. So karma intervenes. We are guilty of trying to think that just because they're a celebrity or just because they're this, that they're good in every way. None of us are good in every way. All
No,
of us
none of us are
are
perfect. Yeah.
all of us
Yeah.
have areas where we need to work on, and life is laid out in such a way where every step you have the opportunity to adapt and change. But if you don't, most times it's going to catch up with you at the least convenient time, and then everybody is going, oh my god. I'm not surprised. It doesn't mean that I assume the worst, but I know that we all have pluses and minuses. We all have deficits. We all have blind spots. We all have areas where we don't want to get out of our own way or we don't want to change. But I do want to say this, only because we're talking about celebrities. Um, Andre Bauer passed, and
Yes.
he was a phenomenal actor. And I mean, I followed his career from Glory to Homicide. In fact, in the in the show Homicide, he was supposed to have had a aneurysm that led to a stroke. And so they show someone who is being forced to try to keep their job, but to adapt to his circumstances. And he played that character so convincingly that it was hard to believe that he really hadn't been beset by the illness. That's how talented he was. So, my heartfelt condolences to all the fans, his family, and his friends, because we've really lost a genuinely talented individual.
Now, for
You
some
know,
reason, I'm trying to remember his birthday. I don't know why I want to make him a
July
Capricorn. What's
1st,
his?
he was a
Oh,
cancer.
he's July 1st.
And
Okay.
an actor that's a cancer, that's a really good actor. they're gonna make you feel it, you know.
Yeah,
And that
because yeah,
when,
it's about the moon, about
yeah,
feelings.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was really fantastic. So that was quite it's sad, because every now and then someone comes along who is immeasurably talented that makes such an invaluable contribution. I mean, he was one of those kind of actors that um even though you weren't related to him, you wanted to claim him as one of your own because you were so proud of his work.
Yeah, yeah. Um, we are close to wrapping up the show. It's amazing how time flies, almost an hour already. Are there some astrological tips you want to share for the signs, or one way or the other
Yeah,
in closing?
yeah, it's the end of the year. We've
Yep,
made it through another year despite many, many losses. Um, we're moving into a cycle where we need to be as realistic as possible. There's a lot of energy and time stealers with social media. And because we were forced during the pandemic and before to be confined, a lot of us have like really lapsed into things that are eating up our time, but not serving any constructive purpose for the quality of our lives. So as
understood.
we go
Understood.
into 2024, we need to be more proactive. We need to be more physical. We need to use our physical bodies more. We need to be exercising more because if you notice, people are leaving in rapid succession. And it's not just because of COVID, but because we've become so sedentary, illness and disease can catch up with us and it can seep in whatever part of our body is most vulnerable. So
Hmm.
not, don't fall into that. Don't let the fact that it's winter not make you not get up, get out, move, exercise. Because it's winter, we need to be eating lighter. We need to stay away from heavy food. We need to avoid tension and stress. We can't just blame it on our relationships. We have to make decisive moves. What can I do that's going to be in the best interest of my self care? I love this person, but is it good for me? Does it bring my mood up? Some people, and I know we're out of time, but Lloyd, some people are actually allergic to one another. Now, what that means is it doesn't mean being around a person will make you sick. But if you have a history and these planets really aren't compatible with one another in a large way, okay, and you keep trying to deal with them. You break up, you get back together, and you say, "Oh, but that's the love of my life." If I hear that line one more time, you know what I mean? Everything has an identity, okay?
Hmm.
So if you're in a relationship with someone and it didn't go well, you leave them alone, you haven't met someone else, so then they come back into your life. You got to realize that the energy of what you dealt with in the past is still on that relationship. And sometimes you feel like, well, if I don't deal with them, I won't have anybody. But because of the energy and the vibration that's already on you, that hasn't been healed, that hasn't been acknowledged, that hasn't been resolved, you try to get back with them. Next thing you know, you got diabetes. Next thing you know, because what I found is that if you're in a relationship with someone that you're not well aspected in, people tend to get sick in the part of their body that the other person's sign represents. I'll give you an example. I was
Interesting.
married to a
Interesting.
Pisces. I was married to a Pisces, and the relationship was coming to an end. And I knew it was coming to an end. I was just upset that I didn't have a plan B, and I was in so deep. Well,
Hmm.
a mirror fell on my foot and fractured four of my toes. What part of the body does Pisces represent?
Defeat.
The feet.
Defeat. Defeat.
So you
Yes.
have to pay attention because see, we'll look at things from an external perspective. You know what I mean? But I find that sometimes if you're dealing with people and there's a lot of negative energy, there's a lot of adversity, they don't even have to hurt you. The next thing you know, while you're trying to deal with that out of control energy, it makes you open and vulnerable to illness and disease, and you start getting sick as a result of trying to hold on to that, work with that, take that on. And very often it will be directly correlated to what that person's sign is or where most of their planets are.
Now, you know what's interesting? I call that EII, which is emotionally induced illnesses. And I
Right.
was explaining that next year is the year of the eight, and normally that brings people back in from the past back into the life versus reunions, things of that nature. Hello? With it?
I'm laughing because that's it. I watch your show all the time. I've never seen that happen, but Mercury is retrograde.
No,
So,
but that's my granddaughter trying to call me. See, and she
okay.
don't understand. She knows it's Wednesday, but anyway, she's eight, so I'm not gonna give her no
Not
problem with
yet.
that. But here's the point: eight in an eight cycle that we're about to enter, it normally reconnects us with people we have not seen in a while, vis-a-vis funerals,
Hmm.
weddings, christenings, baby showers. But in the case of a person from the past relationship, I often will tell the person, if that person comes back into your life, how did it end? Did it end on a good note? Did it end on a dramatic note? Because a person can end on a bad note and say, because a lot of times I'll hear women tell me about a guy who says, okay, I'll do better this time. And then when I asked, did they do better? They said, no. It's almost, it said just enough to get back in. And women have done it too. But men especially are good for that, I
When
noticed.
we do it as well, we do. And if you get back with someone during a retrograde, okay, it doesn't mean that it's going to end badly, but
Hmm.
very often once Mercury goes direct, because see, you got to understand, we can break up, we can leave each other, but there can still be a lot of love left in our hearts for that individual. Okay.
Hmm.
You can't fault anyone for that. But very often, because retrograde means go back to, getting back with them and having it end either badly or even worse, it's to show you why it didn't work in the first place. Some things have to be finished.
Lesson put, well put. Khalea, love you very much. Listen, this is Khalea Washington, my guest, and a very long time metaphysical partner. She is she had a title that I always love called solar biology. She's now an astro empowerment specialist, and she's good at what she does. She's a lecturer, and also she's into design. She has Khalea Collection. She didn't put that on there. We should have included that. But to contact her, dial 973-951-5846. And her email is Khalea Sealy at outlook.com. And of course, her Cash App and PayPal. Please support her because she, like me in those early stages, we all stepped out on faith, just a love and passion for what we did. We had no assurances, we had no 401ks. We just did it, just the love of helping humanity, which is what our signs is known for anyway. So please support this beautiful sister, Khalea Washington. Khalea, I want to thank you so much, dear, for taking your valuable time to talk about retrograde and other things. And I hope other people begin to really see astrologically and metaphysically how this world works with the planets. Yes, we have control, but then there's some things in the heavens that we have no control over, and such is the case.
Well, Lloyd, it's always a pleasure to be with you. And as I said, working with you and you taking me under your fold has really encouraged me to try to be as good as I can be and help my people and share information that they can actually use. I specialize in self help and behavior modification. I do one
And
on
you're
one,
good at it.
and
And
I
you're
do
good at it.
so if they'd like to call me and get a reading, or we can do I'm trying to get this word out with this dentistry thing going. Lectures and workshops for 2024. You can reach out to me and we'll put something together. But thank you again for having me.
And in
It's all
fact, maybe we could do one together at a Source of Knowledge in Newark.
yeah, we will. We will. We
Yeah,
will.
I think that's
But
nice.
you have a
Great.
great year. You stay
You too,
healthy.
dear.
You stay
Yeah,
safe.
yeah, yep. And the same to you too. And you're the best, honey. Thank you so much. Everybody, before we go, I just want to let you know about next week. First of all, the sponsors that we have. And hold on, let me go here. All righty. Thank you. That's Khalea Washington, where you get in touch with her. Please do. Just want to let you know that there's a couple of things coming up. Um, I want to let you know, first of all, I want to thank Manifest on Purpose for sponsoring the show this week. She is on Apple, Google, um, Spotify, Spreaker, whatever the case is. You need to listen to some of her shows. This is very deep. Okay. So that's why I said, let me sponsor her show. And then she says, well, let me sponsor your show. So I really appreciate the reciprocity of it. And to my brother, in every sense of the word, King Simon, the man is just great. Of course, we both Aquarian, so I'm partial to him right away for that. On next Monday, we're having where's it? Okay, how come it's not showing up? There we go. Brother Donald Thomas. First of all, he set 3 Guinness World Records using my numerology. But we're going to talk about some things. For example, did you know that the honey that you put in your tea and other things like that, is about 70% of it is considered fake? And so there's a reason why it's, I guess, for profit or whatever the case is. And so instead of letting the bees go through their normal process of pollination and getting bees the way they should, now is taking shortcuts for the benefit of a profit. So for those of you, there are some do's and don'ts about honey, some of the things you should look for. He's going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Please pick up my December newsletter. Where is it? Wow, things are really moving. Yeah, Mercury's definitely retrograde. Um, the free December newsletter, you can go to Linktree/numbers in you, or go to Lloyd-Strayhorn to pick up a free copy of the newsletter. Also, thank you very much for those of you who have been signing on for my app, a Star 8 app. It's it's almost there. I know I said that before. I have had no idea. Not doing this is a first for me coming out the gate, but it is definitely working. It's definitely improving. And again, so if you should have a problem getting it through your Apple or Play Store, go to my direct website, star8.com, load on from there. And for those of you to help me tighten it, nothing is 100%, although I'm doing my best. Go to a star8llc at gmail.com to let me know what is their concern or whatever the case is, so I can pass that information on to my developer. And in fact, I saw one of my former guests, Dr. Yana Woodhouse, that had a concern. I forwarded to the developer. They got right back and it was resolved. So that's what we do. And by the way, just go to, for those of you who are TikTok fans, I'm on TikTok. It's really growing. It's taking on a life of its own. I have to thank Miss Kimberly for really putting this together. And for those of you who want to learn how to do this primarily, I have a kind of a crash course called Astrology, Astronumerology for Beginners on TikTok. It's a series. It's very easy. It's definitely for beginners. Actually, intermediate and professionals can take advantage and learn something too. It's nothing like a review. So everybody, I do want to thank you very, very much. Please pick up the copy of the free newsletter. My guest next Monday is Donald Thomas. And again, I thank my sponsors, King Simon and Miss Kimberly on Manifest on Purpose. All righty. So with that said, folks, I want to thank you very much. Have a great, great weekend. Take good care of yourselves, because you know my saying, because if you don't take care of yourself, the question is, who will? And I think nowadays you best to do that too. Have a blessed day. Bye.